Hey everybody, welcome to What the Heck Happened with Thom and Todd. Today's episode is a special one. It's called Thom Explains Card Counting in Blackjack. The Thom Explains series will be podcasts about topics and questions that come to me either from my friends, people I work with, or through our Facebook, website, Twitter. I've put out the call out there. If you got something that you would like me to talk about or try to explain, I will do so. And the rules to this is that I don't get to use the internet to answer the question. I have to do this to the best of my knowledge. So it ought to be fun. And then we can have fun fact-checking afterwards. But this first episode, I wanted to talk about card counting in Blackjack, which is something I've been involved with now for about 3 years. And first, before we begin, counting cards is not illegal. That's a nice urban legend, a myth. Card counting is frowned upon, but is not illegal. Casinos are private businesses, and they have the right to refuse service to anyone. And if they have any reason to believe that you are counting cards or doing anything to give yourself an advantage in a casino, it is well within their right to ask you to leave and not come back again. So that's basically the worst that can happen these days. Now, you hear stories about back in the day when Vegas was controlled by the mob, and these guys were taken out back, they were roughed up. I mean, good grief, if you've seen Casino, the things that, Joe Pesci did to people. Okay, you know, the hammers, the saws, squeezing the eyeballs out of the guy. I didn't want to get too graphic, but you know what I mean. But they don't do that these days. Corporate America took over Las Vegas in the 80s and 90s, and now it's just another business like everything else. And card counters they're tracked. They are tracked by a detective agency out in Nevada. And this detective agency sells their services, and they sell this database to different casinos. Said these guys show up, and they can run their face through the database, find them, and kick them out. But that's basically all you really can do. You just refuse play at the table. So, I hope I've taken care of that one, because whenever I tell anyone that I count cards at Blackjack, as the first thing first I get the side eye. That's great. I just love getting, yeah, sure. And then they're almost within the next 3 sentences, well, isn't counting cards illegal? And I have to go through and explain that. No, it's just frowned upon. Let's move on. So, Blackjack. Well, let's just go through the basics of the game. All right? I overhear a lot of gambling advice in casinos, and perhaps the most frequent is this one. The object of Blackjack is to get as close to 21 as possible without going over. The object of Blackjack is actually to beat the dealer. And in doing so, the ways that you can do this, to beat the dealer, the player must first not bust or go over 21, which means the total amount of cards you're holding in your hand can't go over 21. And second, you have to outscore the dealer or have the dealer themselves bust. So here's the absolute full rules of the game. Number 1, Blackjack may be played with 1 to 8 decks of 52 card decks. If you're playing at an 8-card shoe, that means there's 416 cards in that shoe. Aces may be counted as 1 or 11, 2 to 9 according to the actual card value, and 10s and face cards are counted as 10 points. The value of a hand is the sum of the point values of the individual cards, except a blackjack is the highest hand, consisting of an ace and any 10-point card, and it outranks all other 21-point hands. After the players have bet, the dealer would give 2 cards to each player and the 2 cards to himself. One of the dealer cards is dealt face up. The face down card is called the hole card. And if the dealer is showing an ace, he will offer a side bet called insurance. This side wager pays 2 to 1 if the dealer's hole card is any 10-point card. Insurance wagers are optional and may not exceed half the original wager. Side note, insurance is an absolute sucker bet. Don't ever take it. If the dealer has a 10 or an ace showing, after offering insurance with an ace showing, he will peek at his face down card to see if he has a blackjack. If he does, he will turn it over immediately. If the dealer does not have a blackjack, then all wagers, except insurance, will lose, unless the player has a blackjack, which will result in a push. The dealer will resolve insurance wagers at this time. A push just means that you don't lose your bet, you don't win any money, you just move on to the next hand. Play begins with the player to the dealer's left. The following are the choices available to players. Stand. The player stands pat with his cards. Hit. A player draws another card and more if he wishes. If his card causes the player's total points to exceed 21, known as breaking or busting, then he loses. Double. Player doubles his bet and gets one and only one more card, which means you're doubling your bet. You're doubling down. Split. If the player has a pair or any two 10-point cards, then he may double his bet and separate his cards into two individual hands. The dealer will automatically give each card a second card. Then the player may hit, stand, or double down normally. However, when splitting aces, each ace only gets one card. Sometimes doubling down after splitting is not allowed. If the player gets a 10 and an ace after splitting, then it counts as 21 points, not a blackjack. And usually the player may keep resplitting up to a total of 4 hands. Sometimes resplitting aces is not allowed. Most Maryland casinos, they only allow you to split 3 times. Surrender, and this is important. The player forfeits half of his wager, keeping the other half, and does not play out his hand. This option is only available on the initial 2 cards, and depending on casino rules, sometimes it is not allowed at all. Surrender is very helpful and will help you manage your bankroll and will help keep you in the game longer. We'll go over that in a little bit. After each player has had his turn, the dealer will turn over his whole card. If the dealer has a 6 or less, then he will... 16, I'm sorry. If he has a 16 or less, then he will draw another card. A special situation is when a dealer has an ace in any number of cards totaling 6 points, known as a soft 17. At some tables, the dealer will also hit a soft 17. If the dealer goes over 21 points, then any player who didn't already bust will win. If the dealer does not bust, then the higher point total between the player and the dealer will win. Winning wagers pay even money, except a winning blackjack player usually gets paid 3-2. Some casinos have been short paying blackjacks, which is strongly in the casino's favor. Some casinos will pay out a blackjack 6-5, and that's just a joke. I always try to look for tables with the rules that the dealer must stand on all 17s, including the soft ace 6 17. That the blackjack is paid out 3-2. That there is no mid-shoe entry, which means once a new shoe is dealt, no new players can jump in on the table. Is there anything else? Surrendering must be allowed. I will not sit at a table when they don't allow you to surrender. So those are the basic rules of casino blackjack as it's played today. Now, let's get into basic strategy. And this is what's going to help you make those decisions based on the cards you have and based on the cards of what the dealer is showing. So, basic strategy. Here we go. Try to hang in there with me. I'm going to go through this quickly, but it's going to set up the layer for everything and moving forward with card counting because I'm going to reference back to basic strategy. And before I begin, you can get a basic strategy cheat card at the casino, and they will be more than happy to let you play with that little cheat sheet right there next to you because they think you're a newbie and you're going to lose all kinds of money to them. So go ahead, check out the shops in the casino, ask for it, see if they have a basic strategy for blackjack cheat card. It's like the size of a playing card itself. You can just have that there with you and get familiar with it before you hit the table and go out there and do it. So here we go. Basic strategy. And this is the basics of basic strategy. There's all kinds of different, kind of adjustments you can make within basic strategy depending on the table rules and how many decks of cards you're playing with. But we're just going to stick with these basics here. So, let me explain surrender. I had mentioned before, surrender is very important at the table, and it is, because I surrender any hard 16 when the dealer is showing a 9, 10, or an ace. And I always surrender hard 15s versus 10s. You get half your bet back, and you can just shake it off and move along. I cannot tell you how many times that surrendering has kept me in the game until a shoe went very, very good and started to pay off. It just keeps you into the game. I've sat down at blackjack, This is a quick little side story. But I've sat down with Blackjack, and I've been broken down to my last minimum bet. And I wouldn't have been there if I hadn't surrendered in previous hands. And that little minimum bet brought me all the way back to even money, and then it got me even more money. There was one night I was sitting at the casino, and I was broken down. I was playing at a $25 minimum table, and I was busted all the way down to my last $25. And the next hand was a blackjack. And then the next hand was 2 8s that I split against a 6. And I was able to split those, and then it paid off on both. And then it just kept working from there. So in about, to the end of the shoe, I started off the night with $300. I think I was sitting there with $700. So surrendering is bankroll management and allows you to stay in the game long enough to get to the good part of that shoe. So here we go. So surrender, always surrender 16s against 9, 10, or ace, and always surrender a hard 15. And I'm talking about hard cards here, hard 16. It's got two numbers that absolutely add up to 16. No ace and 5, and no ace and 4. It's got to be cards that add up to that number. And you can only surrender on your initial 2 cards. You can't surrender after you've taken another card from the dealer. So surrender 16s against 9, 10, ace. Surrender 15 against 10s. Next, we're going to go to splitting. Always split aces and 8s. The 8s thing, I'm going to explain in advanced rules because that doesn't always work out. But you do absolutely always split your aces no matter what the dealer is showing. Never split 5s and 10s. I'm going to say that again. Never split 5s and 10s. No one in their right mind should ever split 10s. You have a 20. You have a winning hand. Cut it out. Stop being greedy. And I've never seen it work. I've never seen it work. Never split 5s because a 5 is a 10. And no matter what the dealer is showing, well, you just take the hit, or you're going to double down. And it gives you an opportunity to make more money anyway. So don't split 5s. When you split 5s, what you're doing is basically giving yourself 2 losing hands. Because when you begin with 5, if the next card is a 10, you're sitting there and another 10, you're sitting there with 2 15s. You've got nowhere to go. You're stuck. So just don't ever split 5s. Split 2s and 3s against a dealer 4 through 7. And only split a 2 and a 3 against another 2 or 3 if a double down after split is allowed. Most casinos around here allow the double down after split. So that's a very rare situation. I think I've only seen in Vegas, Reno, a couple places in Atlantic City, but I've never seen it in Maryland. But yeah, only split 2s and 3s against the 2 and 3 if you can double down after you split those cards. Because what if you end up with an 8 or a 9 or a 7 on that 3? You can double down, in a lot of situations against the dealer. So only do that if you can double down after split. Split 4s only if double down after split is allowed when the dealer shows a 5 or 6. Otherwise, keep them. You have an 8 and just play it as an 8. Split 6s against the dealer 3 through 6 and against a 2 if double down after split is allowed. And I hope this is not confusing everyone. I'm just going to go over the rules. I'll give you a list of resources to go to and see this for yourself, and you can learn more about it if you really are interested. Split 7s against a dealer 2 through 7, and split 9s against a dealer 2 through 6 or 8 through 9. You never split 9s against a 7. It's an 18, and you're going to beat a 17, so why throw away a winning hand? That's the reason for that. But with an 18 versus an 8 is a push, and an 18 versus a 19 is a loser. So you're going to double down. You're going to split those and take your chances there. So double downs. You double down on a hard 9 versus a dealer 3 through 6. You double down on a hard 10 against every other hand except for a 10 or a dealer ace. You double down a hard 11 except against a dealer ace. You know what? I still double down against a dealer ace. I still do it. Double soft 13 or 14 versus a dealer 5 or 6. That's a very simple one. double down a soft 15 or 16 versus a dealer 4 through 6, and double down a soft 17 or 18 versus a dealer 3 through 6. It's just mathematical, the way those rules were created. I don't really have a good explanation of why. And remember, soft hand is any combination of cards where an ace is involved. So an ace 4 is a 5 or a soft 15. And so if one of your cards is an ace, basically you have a soft hand. And when to hit or stand. Okay. Always hit a hard 11 or less. So if you have anything hard, a 2 through 11, you're going to hit it. Always stand on a hard 12 against a dealer 4 through 6. A dealer 4 through 6 for them is a break card. If that next card is a 10 and then there's another high card coming out of the shoe for them, they're going to bust. That's why you always stand against that 4 to 6 with a 12. You stand on a hard 13 and 16 against a dealer 2 through 6. Otherwise, hit. So if you have a hard 13 through 16, if you're sitting there with a 7-6 in your hand, you have a hard 13, you are going to stand against a 2 through 6 showing for the dealer, and anything of a 7 through ace, you're going to take a hit. Unless you're at a 15 or a 16 up against a 10 or an ace where you're going to want to go ahead and surrender that hand. Always hit soft 17 or less. If you have an ace 6, don't sit there with a 17 in your hand when you have the possibility of quite a few cards left in that shoe that could help you out, get you to 19 or 20, and beat that dealer hand. Otherwise, you're just even if you get a 10, you're just going to be right back to a hard 17, and no harm, no foul. Stand on a soft 18, except hit against a dealer 9, 10, or 11. Okay, a soft 18 can't beat a 19, a 20, or a 21. So give, like in the previous example with the soft 17, give yourself the opportunity to improve your hand and beat the dealer. Always stand on soft 19 or more. Always stand on soft 19 or more. If you're sitting there with an ace 9, you have 20. It is 20. Stand. If you have an ace 8, it is a 19. Stand. Don't even move. It is a waste of a card. Trust me. I've seen so many people take a hit on these cards and just screw everybody else at the table and steal the dealer's break card. And it is frustrating, and it's heartbreaking, and it's a way to make enemies really quickly. Now, as I mentioned, I have kind of my own special rules that I like to follow when I play Blackjack, and they are modified based on the rules I've just mentioned in basic strategy. So, about surrendering a 15, surrender 15 always, and I surrender 8s because that's a 16 when the dealer has an ace. And I also surrender 8s, 16s versus 10s. Now, I found this very helpful, and it's very helpful because especially at a table where the dealer is required to hit a soft 17 and does not stand on all 17s. That extra opportunity just takes so much of the edge away from you to be able to hold on to those cards or split them and win. It really does. Always double down on the 11 versus the ace. I mentioned that before. I always do. I double down all my 11s. I don't care what the dealer's showing. I'm going to take that chance. Because you know what? If I get a 21 and the dealer shows a 21, so what? It's a push. Double soft 18 versus a dealer 2. I don't do that one. I do if I'm counting. And I know what the count is, and that's going to be the next part of this, but we'll save that for then. And the last rule, double down a soft 19 versus a 6. I do that. I always double down soft 19s versus 6. I double down soft 18s versus 6. I'll double down basically anything versus a 6. 6s are a loser card for the dealer. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what the losing percentage is, but it's in your favor. It's definitely in your favor when the dealer has a 6 up card that they're going to bust. So make every move you can when the dealer has that 6 showing. You think about whatever you can do to get more money out of that casino. So I'd like to thank real quickly the wizardofodds.com because a lot of this information came from their site. I was a devout disciple of that website when I was learning. And I really, really, really recommend it. And you should definitely visit. So we're going to go on to the next part of this. And I'm going to start to talk about learning to count cards in Blackjack. So card counting. How the heck did I get into it? Well, back in 2014, the beginning of that year, it just so happened that a very good friend of mine was going to be married. And we decided as a group of about 8 or 10 fun-loving guys who hardly ever get away anymore, that we were going to go to Las Vegas and celebrate his last days as a single man. And we went out to Vegas. We stayed at the Golden Nugget down on Fremont, which I highly recommend if you really want to swim with humanity and bump uglies with humanity. Stay down on Fremont. It is a joy. But actually, I did like the Golden Nugget very much. So in January 2014, we had booked our trip for September. Yes, September, because we were flying out on September 11th, and we were all just a little nervous. And I remember there was a special September 11th extra tax fee on my ticket. It was strange. Anyway, so it was January. I'm going to Vegas in about 8 months, and I decided after seeing the movie 21 with Kevin Spacey that I was going to teach myself how to count cards. I mean, they made it look like it was so much fun, and it was easy. Anyway, the movie 21 is based on a book by Ben Mesrick. I can't remember. Ben Mesrick. It was called Bringing Down the House, and it was a story about MIT students learning how to count cards, going out to Vegas, and taking it down for millions of dollars. This is actually based on a true story, although the movie took many liberties, and they actually combined the experiences of two different groups from two different decades at MIT that did go out to Vegas and took them down for a lot of money. And they developed the system for card counting, which was actually born from a gentleman many years before them at MIT by the name of Edward Thorpe. So Mr. Thorpe, let's just get into him just really quickly. Edward Thorpe, let's see. I have some notes that I wrote down from what I could remember. He taught probability and functional algebra at MIT. And he programmed one of the first IBM supercomputers, the 704, to calculate the odds on over 34 million potential hand combinations in blackjack. What he found is that when small cards come out of the deck, this favors the player, and when large cards are leaving the deck, it favors the house. Which means when you see 2s through 6s coming out of the shoe, that's good for you. When you see a lot of 9s, 10s, and aces coming out, that's not so good for you. He published an article with his findings in 1960 in the Notices of the American Mathematical Society, and then he wrote the Blackjack Bible, Beat the Dealer. So, Mr. Thorpe, I don't know if he's a doctor, but Mr. Thorpe, let's just call him Ed. Ed had come up with this whole set of statistics and probability, and if you have this hand, this is how you play it against the dealer. That was basic strategy. That was what we had just gone through. All those when to hit this, when to stand, when to double down, when to surrender. That was all born out of what Ed did with the IBM 704 at MIT. He had run these simulations on 34 million possible hands. And that's what he came out with. These rules, these tables that tell us how to react to the dealer's cards based on what we have. Well, then he went a step further. And it was that whole thing about, the small cards coming out of the shoe favor the player, and the high cards coming out favor the house. He developed a very simple system at first called the high-low counting system, which is the one that I use. There are far more complex counting systems out there, and I have played with those as well. They're much more precise, but we're going to stick with the high-low. I think everyone needs to start out in counting with the high-low. And this is it, very basic. Cards 2 through 6 have a value of +1. 7, 8, and 9 have a value of 0. 10s and aces have a value of -1. So as the cards are dealt to you and to all the other players at the table and to the dealer themselves when they show them, you've got to be able to count all those cards, -1, 0, and +1, and come up with an overall total. When that overall total is positive, the odds are more in your favor. When that overall total goes negative, the odds are in the house's favor. So then you go one step beyond that. So I mentioned before, blackjack can be played with 1 to 8 decks of cards. Okay, so yeah, that's when people will start to get lost. Because I can't sit there and count 8 decks of cards. Well, first of all, when a new set of cards, let's say 8 cards, 8 decks of cards comes out of that shuffler, well, you're not going to play all 8 decks because they put that cut card about a deck to a deck and a half from the back. So you're only playing with about, 7, 6.5 decks of cards. What's good about counting is that you know when there's 10s, how many 10s may be left in that deck that are to your advantage, or when you may know when, I just need to play the minimum bet, try to survive this shoe, and get to the next one with a better count. So let's take a sample hand. I'm playing one-handed against the dealer. So the dealer gives me a 2-6 and the dealer's showing a 10. The burn card was a king. Always ask to see the burn card at the casino. They try to hide them and put them into the discard tray very quickly, but you can always ask to see them, and no one has ever been refused to see the card. The only way to keep an accurate count is to see that burn card. The burn card is the first card out of a new shoe that the dealer just takes off the top and puts in and discards it. Always ask to see the burn card. So let's say that burn card was a king, so our count is running at -1. We start at 0. All shoes start at 0. So now we're -1 with the king. He deals me a 6 and a 2. So right now we're at +1. And then here's the whole card. I don't know what the whole card is. So right now I'm sitting there at a +1 advantage against the dealer. Now this being a new shoe, if it were a single deck, the true count would be +1. But that number, that +1 number, to get what's called the true count, you have to divide that by the remaining decks in the shoe. Well, how do you, and this is card counting, like high level stuff. How do you figure out how many shoes are remaining in a deck? Well, if you're halfway through the shoe and you've got a count, a rough count of 13 let's make it even, plus 14, and you look over in the discard pile and it's about halfway there. All right. If you've been practicing, you know just about what the thickness of a standard deck of cards is going to be. And you can look at it and say, okay, there's 4 decks in there. There's 4 decks remaining. 14 divided by 4 is roughly 3.5. It is 3.5. So the true count is plus 3.5. And that's pretty good. So if you got a true count of plus 3.5, what you need to start doing is moving your bet up in increments. Because right now at a plus 3.5, you have the likelihood of getting a 10 because there's more 10s in that shoe right now than there are small cards that can hurt you. You may get a 20, you may get a 21, you may end up with a 19, may 18, so you're going to start with good hands. Now, because the dealer has to hit against anything lower than a 17, then they're likely to bust. Because if they show a 5 up and you're going to assume that card below it's a 10, they got 15, the next one's going to likely be a 10. And if it is a 10, it's 25. They're done. They're cooked. And you're sitting pretty. And that's why I was talking about earlier when making decisions of when to split and not to split. Sometimes when I have 2 8s, but I have there's a high count in the shoe, I'm going to split them. I'm going to split them in every situation because it's very likely I'm going to get 18s. And even if I get a small card, then okay, it'll probably be another hit. If I get a 2 or a 3, that's fine. I'll take a 20 or a 21. I mean, who wouldn't? So card counting. As the cards are coming out and being dealt, you've got to teach yourself how to count them all, +1, 0, and 1, and keep that running number in your head. It's not easy. But you know what? You don't need to be a math genius to do this. It takes practice. So I started practicing in January of 2014. I went on Amazon. I bought myself 8 decks of cards. I bought myself a shoe, an actual acrylic dealer shoe. I bought the felt top for Blackjack, and I started teaching myself how to count cards. And I also had to teach myself basic strategy at the same time because I wasn't very good at that either. So I would sit there literally with 4 decks of cards in my hand while I was watching TV every night for 3 months until I could get through and count the cards, and then I would stop. And if you have, here's the beauty of counting. If you have a deck of cards and you count from beginning to end, you always end with 0. They always end in 0. So you always have that. So it's always balanced. So I would sit there with 4 complete decks of cards, and I would just count. Sometimes I would use a timer on my phone and get through a minute, and I got to the point where I could count accurately to the number in 1 minute 2 decks of cards. So when I got to that point, I felt like, okay, it's time to take the show out on the road. And so my first session at counting cards was at Maryland Live, and Maryland Live has actually 3 types of tables. If you go to the high limit room, they have hand shuffle 2 deck, which is great, but you have $100 minimum bets and $200 minimum bets, and I don't live like that, man. So I had to play the regular tables out there with the $15, $25, $50 minimum bets. So there's 2 types of shufflers at this particular casino, and I mentioned before the continuous shuffler, the one that sits on top of the table, has the rounded, almost looks like a seashell or a snail shell cover on top of it. I'm not really sure how many decks they hold. I believe it's 4. But when they discard and they get to about 2 decks of cards in the discard, they just feed it right back into the machine and just continuously keeps going. And that will do you no good at counting. You will not be able to count and get an advantage at this type of shuffler. These shufflers are for noobs. They're for suckers. And these shufflers place the house edge way below what it should be, or way above what it should be for blackjack. You want to find the other shuffler in the beginning. So what this shuffler looks like, when you look at the back corner of the blackjack table, you'll see a black box with a red and a green button on it and an LED or an LCD screen glowing. And it's at one of the corners behind or beside the dealer. And it shuffles up to 8 decks at a time, and it alternates. So there's 2 decks of 8. There's 2 complete 8 decks in each side. So you can play a game through a shoe while it's shuffling one complete 8 deck set, and then when you're done with the first one, you put that in there. You take out the new ones. You cut the card with the cut cards, and then you just keep moving on. It just speeds up the game. But here's the thing about those counters. They have optic readers in them. And the optic reader is able to identify when there's a damaged card or a card that has been removed from those 8 decks. That is how precise and accurate it is. I've also read in the operating manuals for these shufflers that they are able to, they have a sorting function where they can place all those 8 decks of cards right back into the same order they were when they first came out of the fresh pack. So that machine has the ability to reorder cards any way it likes. You can think I'm being paranoid. Please go search it for yourself. If you search for Bally, Bally, Shuffle Master, you'll find it. You'll find it there, and you'll find a lot of blogs about people talking about them, and casino employees will tell you about it. The only thing is if they are working that specific mode where it takes it back to original pack order, the lights flash in a certain way. You would definitely notice it if they were trying to do that. But what I've noticed about these machines, especially on Friday and Saturdays when they're the busiest times and the limits are highest at the tables, is that the card count rarely ever drifts away from a -3 to a 3. It's very rare it goes really super negative, and it's very rare it ever goes very positive. The best days I have found to ever play at any casino is mornings from 7 until 1 in the afternoon, Tuesday to Thursday. It seems like for some reason the machines aren't working so hard. For example, 2 weeks ago, I had ended a meeting was canceled for me during the morning. So I was on my way back, and I decided to stop and get lunch at the place where the casino was connected to. And I just walked over for 20 minutes, and I sat down at the beginning of a shoe, and right away that shoe went to a +30 with a true count right away of +4, and didn't leave. It didn't drop until the very end, and I was able to basically take $300. And I cashed out at $1,200 in one shoe. So how do you make more money? I mean, when that positive count goes in your favor, what do you do? My rule is this: if I'm playing a $15 table, let's make it simpler. If I'm playing a $10 table, then when that true count gets to a +2.5, +3, I'm going to double my minimum bet. When it gets to a +3.5 to +5, I am going to triple my minimum bet. And if it gets any better than that, I'm going to quadruple my minimum bet. And I've had very, very, very good luck with this. Why does it work? It's like I said before. 10s in the shoe are good for you. Little cards in the shoe are good for the house. Because you're going to have to make more decisions and take cards or stand against them when they have to hit to make that 17. You don't. You can stop taking cards whenever you want to. You can take more cards whenever you want to. You may piss off your neighbors around you there at the table because you're not playing basic strategy if you do that. But and trust me, everyone sitting there with you knows basic strategy. And everyone is more than happy to tell you how you should play your hand if you ask. If you were new to this and you're really not sure what to do, everyone is more than happy to give you some guidance. You can take it if you want it or not. But if you're playing there with 5 other people and they're telling you to all do the same thing, do it. Even if you lose, you've probably done the right thing and you've made the right play. The thing is, when everyone loses a hand but everyone's played the way it should be played, no one really gets mad. They just get upset at the dealer. And it's not even the dealer's fault, man. It's just cards. So, where was I? Oh, man, I totally lost myself. Well, that particular day, the count got so positive and I won a lot of money so quick. I started out just playing $15 a hand, but it got so crazy at the end of it, that plus 30 when there was only, I think it was at plus 25 and there was only 2 decks left. That was a plus 12 over. It was a plus 12 plus. And I was playing $200 a hand and I was winning. I could not lose. Blackjacks, 20s. The dealer was busting with 23s, 24s. Everyone at the table was winning. And I got out. I had to go to work, But that was luck. That was extreme luck. But those kind of things seem to happen during the weekdays and the mornings. They never happen in the weekends. You may think it's a conspiracy theory on my part, or that I'm slightly paranoid and I should be wearing tinfoil hats. But I got a feeling that they adjust the mechanics on those shufflers to make them tighter in the count, so that they optimize how much money they're making off those tables on the weekends when they have most players at the table with the highest minimums. Take that as you will. So card counting takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. And card counting is going to bring you heartache. It will bring you... Let me tell you a story. While I was out at the Golden Nugget in September with my buddies during the bachelor party, I won a lot of money in 3 days. I won a tremendous amount of money. It was the most money I'd ever won. They had two deck hand shuffled games in there with $10 minimums. It was fantastic. I could wait for that count to go sky high with 2 decks and suddenly bet $100 and get a blackjack. And also you got to be careful with that because that is a sign of card counting. Is how quickly you move your bets up and down. So sometimes I disguise it with what's called progressive betting, where some people, if they start out with 10, they win a hand, they'll put $5 of their winnings on that 10, make it 15. They win again, they'll take another 5 off their winnings and make it 20. And they progressively increase their minimum bet. That is a losing strategy, but it's a great way to disguise card counting as well. Because if you're increasing and you know the card count's good, then it's okay. But if you're not a card counter and you follow progressive betting strategy, you're going to be out of that table in about 10 minutes. It's like the opposite of surrender. It's horrible. So I was at the Golden Nugget, and on the final night, I decided to go to the high limit room and play blackjack. It was a $50 minimum table. Sundays are very slow in Vegas. Everyone's going back home from their weekend stays. And I sat at the table with 4 other people, and I brought $2,000 down from the room with me. So I cashed in $1,000 and was doing okay for a while. I think it was up to about $4,500. But then this hand came along. And this is why, as I mentioned before, I am scared of splitting 8s. And here it is. I was dealt a pair of 8s. I was playing $200 a hand at this point. Count was high. It was great. The count was probably over 10 at this point. And like I said, this was two deck hand shuffle. No machines. This is all fate. And I had 2 8s playing $200 hands, so I had $200 bet on the table, and I got the 2 8s. Well, of course, I split them. The dealer was showing a 5. So I split them. At 2 8s, okay. Another $200. The next card was a 2 on the 8, so I was able to double down. But another $200. I got a 19. All right, I got $400 there on a 19. My other 8, well, guess what? I got another 8 again. So I split it again. So I split that 8, put another $200 down for that 8. Next card was a 10, so I got an 18 and a 19. Great. So between that 18 and 19, I got $600 there. I'm like, yeah, all right. It's going to work out. So my next 8 over here with the other $200, I got another 8. So I split them again. Another $200. At this point, there's $1,000 on the table. So the next card on that third 8 ended up being an ace. So I had a 19. I stayed. The next card on that fourth 8 ended up being a 3. I doubled down. I now have $1,200 on the table with all these 8s, and I'm feeling pretty good. I got 18s. That 8 and that 3. I got a 8, another 8. Believe it or not, the 8s were all over the place, and it was another 19. So I had like 19, 19, 20, 18. I was like feeling really good against a 5. And the count was still, even after that, the count was still plus 21. I don't know, somewhere around there. So everybody else played. The count was, at the end of it was still plus 13. I was feeling really great with that dealer 5. She turned over a hold card, and it was a 6. She had 11. And yes, it happened. The next card was a queen. She hit 21. And in one hand, I lost $1,200. Well, that just kind of sent me into a spiral. And I started making some bad decisions, which was another hard lesson that I had to learn. And I ended up giving him back a lot of money that night. I think at that point, my bankroll was up about $4,900. I still came home with about $33. But it really, that one hurt. That splitting all those 8s 4 times, getting really great hands on those second cards, double down opportunities, and they still got me. They still got me. And that's the thing about Blackjack. Blackjack isn't the type of casino game that you can walk up to and make really quick money. And it happens all the time. When I play at Maryland Live, there's always people bouncing over from the craps tables. They just like squeeze in real quick. They slap $50 down on a position. They screw up the entire table. They lose. We all lose when we've been winning. It kind of resets the order of the cards, and then things go bad. You have these people that bounce in and out and just destroy tables. That's why I like the no mid-shoe entry. But, you know, Blackjack is all about long-term play. It's not a game where you make a lot of money very quickly. That Monday a few weeks ago, notwithstanding. Like I said, that was complete luck. If you want to make quick money, go play roulette. You're probably going to end up losing it. Go play craps, which has slightly better odds, but the way they play it, you know, the no pass, and I'll get into craps in another episode, but it just... Blackjack is not a fast money solution in the casino. It is, when you're a card counter and you play good basic strategy, it is a grind. It is a grind. But when you're winning, it kind of soothes the grind. After I learned how to count, I was in the casinos for a solid year and a half, probably at least once a week. And I was winning money and I was losing money, and I kept a running spreadsheet of my wins, and I ended up doing pretty well. But I would tell you that it became difficult to count whatever that last number in my head of a count that I had at the table would haunt me for days. So let's say I left the table with a count of minus 12. When I go to sleep at night, all I think is minus 12, minus 12, minus 12, minus 12. Wake up in the morning, minus 12, minus 12, minus 12. Go to work, minus 12, and so on, until it just fades out naturally. And it was just annoying me. I was getting headaches. I mean, it is a grind. It becomes a job. It really does. And if you go against that long-term play theory and philosophy, and you do go in there one night thinking, okay, tonight I'm going to hit it. Tonight I'm going to make it. I'm going to go for it tonight. You're going to lose everything you have. You're going to do stupid things. You're going to make moves you shouldn't be making. You stop surrendering and start hitting 15s and 16s. You're splitting 8s against a 10. You're doing all kinds of crazy stuff because you're like, I'm going to make it tonight, and it never works. There could be a plus 20 count on that shoe. And you're making these stupid moves because you think the world is your oyster, and you get slammed. You slammed hard. It has happened to me, It's happened to others. I've seen people, you can just see it in their eyes when you're sitting at the table with them. And their head is in their hand, and they look like they haven't slept in 3 days, and they're shaking. I've seen it. It's horrifying. It's sad. And that's the dark side of gambling. But I took a long break. I took about a 1-year break from it. I had to, because it was driving me crazy with these numbers in my head. Even the past 2 times that I went over the past couple of weeks, I was at Maryland Live for lunch. Luckily, it was a short, quick, but and the number didn't stick in my head, and I won so much money. I was like, hey, But when I went to National Harbor with Ashley down the MGM that just built outside of D.C., I spent a lot of time at the table counting, and I know that when I left, that last count was -3. And I still can't get it out of my head. -3, -3, -3. Everywhere I go, -3. And I only played 2 times in a week, and I had -3, -3. So, yeah, I know, it sounds really annoying. But so you have to learn how to take breaks. You gotta pace yourself. My advice to anybody is, like, if you want to go chase money, don't play blackjack, because it's not the right game for you. If you want to go chase money, play the slot machine, go play craps, go play roulette, go play 3-card poker. Don't play blackjack, because blackjack is long-term, and you need stamina to play that game. You need to know basic strategy, and most of all, you need to learn how to count cards and not make it look like you know how to count cards. I will tell you that I've almost been backed off out of a casino. The closest that I ever got to getting backed off is when I went to the high-limit room at Planet Hollywood. And I was playing $50 tables early in the morning, and I was counting, and I was doing really well. And I was asked if I would like to take a break. And I got this really uneasy feeling from the pit boss. And I said, you know what, you're right. I've been here for a while, and I haven't eaten breakfast yet. And they gave me a voucher for free breakfast. They were more than happy to color up my chips and send me on my way. So, yeah. So take the first hint, because it's a courtesy. And it's nice that they give you that opportunity, and they will let you continue to play. So that basically, to me, is what card counting is. And I'm sure I blew through this very quickly, and you're probably more confused about it than ever before. But card counting and blackjack. Blackjack is a blast, especially when you're playing with your buddies. You're all at the same table. It's like I said, when you go out to Vegas and you just play solid basic strategy, and you guys can just sit there and have some free drinks and chill out before dinner for an hour, talk to some people, chit-chat, make jokes with the dealer. It's entertainment. There's one key part of this about gambling as a whole, and I said this back in the previous podcast with Ashley, the Las Vegas podcast, that when you go to the casino, you got to have a set budget in your mind. And set a budget for an amount of money you're not going to miss tomorrow. Don't gamble a car payment. Don't gamble your mortgage money. Don't gamble a utility bill. Really set aside money you can lose. And as soon as you sit down at the table and you hand it over to them and they convert that into casino chips, your money is gone. You now have made an agreement that you have given up your money, and they've given you these colorful little wonderful discs that you're going to sit there and play with and go back and forth with them over this silly game. So your goal there is just to get more of their colorful chips. And until you go to the cashier and they exchange it for real cold hard cash again, it's not your money. It's not. They're just little vehicles for you to have some fun. That's what all it is. It's entertainment. You have to think, okay, I've already mentally, psychologically, and emotionally said, okay, here, just have this money. And then you've given me these nice, colorful chips, and we're going to play some cards, and I'm going to see if I can get more of your colorful chips. And then I'm going to go see that lady over there behind the bars. Looks like she's in the big, colorful jail over there with the cash registers, and I'm going to get some more money from the jail lady. Yeah. And then once you get your money from the jail lady in the cashier area, then it's your money. And sometimes you have a little less. Sometimes you've got a little more. Don't gamble if you need money to pay for something. Don't do it. It's not the best way to make money. I have had so many people say to me, my God, man, every time you go, you win blah, blah, blah amount of money. Why do you even work? Because if I made the decision to become a professional blackjack player, which there are people who live in areas with multiple casinos that make their living playing blackjack. That's just what they do. It just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work because, like I said, it's long-term play, and if I hit a period of time where I hit a down period, which lasted for months, then it puts my family at jeopardy. I can't do that. Now, maybe if I were still single, I'd give it a shot, take 6 months off of my life, and see if I could live on playing blackjack. That would be a fun experiment, but I can't. You can't do that in this point in your life when you have a house and kids and all that stuff. And there's also one other fun thing that I like to do for people. Not everyone, just my close friends and some people I work with, is that I've always offered that if I'm going to go out to Vegas, not anywhere locally because it's tough here, but when I go out to Vegas, I say to them, okay, well, if you want to give me $50 or $100, I will use that to play blackjack, and I will guarantee you will get your 50 or 100 back, and whatever I win, you get half. And I've made some people some money. So it's been fun. It's a lot of fun. Look at it as a game, not as a piggy bank. It's not. And sometimes I worry my wife thinks of it that way, or thinks that I think of it that way, but it's not. Now, there have been times when I'm like, hey, man, I want to get these noise-canceling headphones before we go out on this trip. Well, that worked out. Yeah, I went to the casino in the morning. The Best Buy is right in the same center, and I took $200 to the blackjack table, and I made a couple $100 more, and went over to Best Buy, got my noise-canceling headphones, but what are you going to do? But I would never use it to pay a car payment or anything. Don't sacrifice what you don't have. Look at it as entertainment and some fun. If you want to hit the casino, practice up, look up blackjack. Like I said, go to wizardofodds.com. Great website. Love the guy who put it together. He has great YouTube videos as well. Go to YouTube, look up Blackjack Counting Systems. You'll see all kinds of videos, great graphics for you to really follow along, a lot better than me explaining it to you. You can see it visually for yourself. Get yourself a deck of cards. Start working on that high-low counting and start counting those cards all the way back down to zero. Or what I did, take 4 decks of cards, set yourself a timer and see what number you come to, and then count the remaining cards to make sure it comes back to zero. Then you're doing it right. And just keep doing it until you can count 2 decks of cards in 1 minute. And when you're at a table counting, it'll get to a point where you can just look at everybody's hands and you immediately just zero out hands that are sitting in front of people, and you're only counting what's remaining. It becomes really quick. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but with a lot of practice, you're going to enjoy blackjack so much more, and you will impress your friends. Trust me. When you're sitting there with $1,000 in chips in front of you, and they're still sitting there with what they came with, and they're like, "How you what?" And you're just like, "Yeah, that's right." All right, so this is Thom. That was Thom Explains. Thom Explains card counting and blackjack, and the next one in the series will be about my adventures with playing craps and explaining some craps strategies at the table. Until next time, take a look around at what the heck is happening.